Hello, everyone, and welcome to this, our 13th episode of SSH Writers on Writing, where we interview scholars, researchers, and writers across the disciplines about their lives, exploring things like, do they have a specific process to their work? How is their writing different from that in other disciplines? What do they expect from their students? And what do computer scientists do on their downtime? My name is Lori Enns, and I'm the SSH Writing Center Coordinator at Nazarbayev University. And with me today is Dr. Ben Tyler. He's the Associate Department Chair and a professor in the Department of Computer Science at Nazarbayev University. Dr. Tyler, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Lori.
We're really happy to have you. You're our first computer scientist. And as I was looking through your information and your CV, I was surprised to see how much experience you have that seems to integrate components from many different worlds. It broadened my view of what you can actually do in computer science. First question I want to ask then is, did anything in particular get you interested in computer science?
Well, I remember when I was little, I saw this movie on TV. You probably are familiar with it, 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yep.
And as part of the movie, there's this computer, this super intelligent computer, the HAL 9000. It could not only do things like play chess, but it could interact with humans. It could make autonomous decisions. And I thought it was one of the coolest things in the world.
This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it.
I don't know what you're talking about, Hal.
I know that you and Frank were planning to disconnect me, and I'm afraid that's something I cannot allow to happen.
But of course, in the movie, the computer goes ahead and kills all the astronauts on the spaceship that it was piloting, but I still thought it was pretty cool.
Besides the killing part, it was super cool.
Yeah. Of course.
So computer science is so broad. Can you briefly describe to us the research interests that you have then in that broad realm?
Well, I got started in computer science. Actually, I got started as a mathematician. I was looking at getting a PhD in mathematics, and I found that a lot of the problems that I was interested in had more to do with computer science. And so a lot of the things that I'm interested in have a certain theory component to it. So my areas of research interest include things like programming languages and programming language design. Also things relating to formal methods, which is just a fancy way to talk about mathematical techniques to show that your computer programs do what you want them to do. I also have an interest in AI, of course. There's the 2001 connection there, and just AI applications. I'm working with some students looking at things related to natural language processing, which is kind of cool. And also, of course, I'm involved in looking at computer science education, because I spend so much of my time preparing classes, working on curriculum and all of that. So from a pragmatic angle, I actually do a bit of research there.
Yeah, okay. That's really interesting. Actually, maybe I want to jump then to the fourth question. So we're talking about writing, but then I guess you could think about writing in a very broad sense, because we think about writing as writing in human languages. But in terms of writing academic papers or other things, what kinds of writing then do computer scientists do?
It's kind of interesting that you asked that, because as you mentioned at the beginning, my background before I came to NU was actually in industry. I was a software engineer doing research and development work. I actually did a considerable amount of writing while I was working at these different places. Actually, I did a lot of proposal writing. This is just for academics, because we did a lot of contract work, and we had to prove to potential customers that we could actually deliver what they wanted. So I would say that a lot of computer science writing, both inside and outside of academia, I think it has a very strong technical writing component, but I think there's also a strong persuasive component to it.
Being concise is something that would be really important, right? Making sure you wouldn't be interested in saying things using too many words to say things. You would want to have a very concise way of saying something.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You need to be very concise. You need to also be very precise and unambiguous.
And then you're also talking about being persuasive. And so in our first year, our first year writing course is all about writing argument. So I'm wondering, can you say a little bit more about how you need to be persuasive, perhaps in proposals or whatever the writing that you need to do?
Well, you need to first set up your case, your argument, and I do this in many of my classes that have a certain writing component where they have to write like a mini proposal or even like a kickoff document for a project, where they have to first justify why this is even a problem in the first place. And so they have to kind of set things up, and then they have to go through the different steps of how what they're planning on doing or why their particular solution or solution vision is going to fulfill whatever perceived needs there are.
So as you can see, so I know that you do a lot of work with undergraduates and probably the graduates as well. So what do students struggle with the most in terms of writing in your field?
Sometimes it feels like for particular assignments, they feel like what I need to do is I need to write 500 or 1,000 words on this particular topic, and I can throw out buzzwords. I can maybe summarize something that I've read somewhere online, and then it's all good. I think a problem that I see has to do with really kind of thinking about things as a whole and structuring things so that you're putting together a coherent piece of work. Mm-hmm. And if you don't do that, if, say, for instance, you're trying to argue a certain point that what your solution is supposed to be doing, or this particular area that you're researching is important, if you can't kind of marshal your arguments in a cohesive way, everything kind of falls apart and it's less convincing.
Maybe they're not putting enough time and effort and thought into a particular piece of work. And so if they bring in resources but they don't bring them in well enough or thorough enough or thoughtful enough, it just doesn't feel like a good piece of work. Okay, that is enlightening. Then I want to go back to number 3. What do you see as challenges for grad students or young researchers in your field?
The biggest challenge that I see is the fact that computer science, even though it is a very, very broad field, it's constantly changing. So as a young researcher, you have to be very much aware of what's going on in the field all of the time. You can't just kind of focus in just on your work and just crank out a few papers and all that, because when you kind of get up and look at what's going on, things could have already passed you by.
Wow.
So you have to be very agile.
It sounds a bit exhausting. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it can be. With the help of a good advisor that can kind of tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, you should really be looking at this, or I saw something last week at a conference that you really need to look into. I think that could be quite helpful.
Everybody's gone online, things have gone digital, schools and our life has just changed. Is there something that you could put your finger on that might describe what has changed has something changed significantly that you can actually describe?
That's hard to say. I think, with the pandemic, I know that there has been a lot of interest in different technologies that can scale in a massive sense. Things like Zoom.
Yes. Yeah.
So we're talking about things like just IT infrastructure and the like, where can we develop things, or can we design things in such a way so that we can deal with sort of such large amounts of internet traffic. I'm remembering in the early days when everything started shutting down I think it was early 2020, around March, where just all of a sudden everybody was on Zoom. It wasn't just the the universities, and it was the schools, just people just communicating with one another.
First couple of Zoom meetings, I felt like there might have been a problem with Wi-Fi or whatever, but it feels like Zoom did improve over the last 18 months.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't expecting that. I think it was the pandemic was a big boon for them, but at the same time, they weren't, this kind of caught them off guard.
Yeah. Who could have expected?
If anything kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be a highly infectious virus.
Do you think we'll be using the virtual option more often now than we did pre-pandemic?
I think that a lot of people now were forced to use these different technologies such as Zoom when things start to open up and people kind of go back to normal lives, that they'll have in the back of their minds that, hey, these are particular options that we have. So I think this will help corporations or businesses to maybe find talent in other areas of the world, and they see that there's benefits actually to hiring people in different locales that can work on these problems together.
I mean, it does open up a lot of opportunities across, and I'm sure a lot of problems too with the newness. So, okay. Now I'd like to turn the conversation to a bit more personal. Are we ready for these questions?
Oh, sure.
Okay. All right. So if you were not a computer and information scientist, what would be your alternative dream job?
If I didn't study computer science or something mathy, I think I probably would have studied something like philosophy.
Okay.
I'm not saying that I'd be a philosopher, although I guess everybody is kind of a philosopher in their own way, but problems like how the mind works, the philosophy of mind, questions about how do we encode knowledge, or how do we know what we know, questions about consciousness, is it real? Those sorts of things fascinate me.
All right. I feel like you would have been a colleague of Steven Pinker. I feel like that's sort of in that wheelhouse. Okay, so then conversely, let's say not another dream job, but let's say that you did something really bad, you died and went to hell, and then the devil said, you have to come back in your next life and then what would be the job that you would hate to do?
Probably a healthcare worker.
Oh.
And I have the deepest respect for doctors and nurses and paramedics and people in the area, but just the overall level of stress, dealing with people's problems.
Right.
As a teacher of students, students come with me with their problems, but these things are minuscule compared to all of these life and death situations, trying to make these decisions day after day. That's not for me. Agreed.
And I think especially, even beforehand, but even now after the pandemic, I think we all have a deep respect for what they're doing. Yes. Okay. And finally, let's say that a genie, you were walking down the street and a genie popped up in front of you and gave you a wish, and they said, look, from sunrise to sunset tomorrow, you can do anything you want. What would you do in a perfect day?
Oh boy. Well, given that I've been cooped up in the apartment for the last year and a half, just jumping on an airplane to a nice sunny beach somewhere, I'll have to bring plenty of sunblock, but just being in a nice, calm, relaxing environment without emails, without Zoom, just to be able to just be.
Would you be at the beach? Do you like the water, or do you like the village or mountains?
I actually like the beach. I guess I'm a water person. I can't swim very well, but it's very calming to me.
Very feng shui.
Yeah.
That sounds great. And do you have a particular island that you would think you would go to?
I might want to go somewhere in the Caribbean. I've been to the Dominican Republic, just beautiful beaches there, beautiful water.
There's a lot of the turquoise water down that way.
Yeah,
like if you go to my
it's
area.
gorgeous. It's
Yeah,
gorgeous.
yeah. Oh, that sounds great. Now you have me dreaming of sunny climes. Okay, so I'm also conscious of the fact that you have other things to do with your day. And I just wanted to end by saying thank you very much for your time and your thoughtful answers and for giving us a glimpse into the life of a professor of computer science. Thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.